Hey guys, welcome back to Election Center, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 electoral map if Donald Trump is able to pull off a comeback. So basically what I mean by that is if Donald Trump is sort of able to transfer, I'm going to say 2% of the vote from Joe Biden into his column. So he's basically tightening the margins or improving the margins by 4% in his favor. So that's really what I would consider a reasonable comeback for Donald Trump to make. He's sort of transferring 2% of that vote from Joe Biden into his column, and we're going to assume that he does that state by state. So let's just jump in here with these states that would not be affected by a 4% margin improvement. You know, these states where Donald Trump is already leading Joe Biden. You know, some of these states are closer than we would expect right now. Arkansas, Missouri, Alaska. We think of these as safe red states, and they're surprisingly close this time around according to the polling. But yeah, Donald Trump has the lead, and with that 4% margin improvement, that would become more of a comfortable lead for Donald Trump in these states. And before we move on to the others, let's just fill in some of these states that he obviously cannot flip. Donald Trump just cannot flip these states. These safe Democratic states here in the Northeast and then on the West Coast. And I'm also going to fill in Oregon because while it's slightly competitive for the Republicans here in Oregon, we don't actually have any polling data, first off, out of Oregon. That 4% margin improvement is just not enough for Donald Trump to win here in Oregon. And then, of course, Illinois and Hawaii, just too safe Democratic for Donald Trump to really win here. But now we can really get in some of these more interesting competitive states. First off, I want to start off with these more heavily Democratic ones here, New Mexico and Colorado, and then I'm also going to throw Nevada into there. These states that we sort of sometimes consider battleground states almost, New Mexico and Colorado less so because they're really just former battleground states. Nowadays, though, Democrats are, they're just becoming more and more safe Democratic states. We see Joe Biden with like a 16-point lead here in Colorado, and also a pretty large lead one here in New Mexico. New Mexico pretty much almost just a safe Democratic state now. Nevada, it hasn't gone to the Republicans in a really long time, since George W. Bush in 2004. So really, I kind of consider these former battleground states, ex-battleground states, that really just aren't plausible for the Republicans to win anymore. And if you look at the polling data, Joe Biden's leading by more than 4 points. That 4-point improvement is not gonna give Donald Trump the win in these states. So yeah, these are 3 states that I just consider too far out of. These 3 states just too far out of Donald Trump's reach. Over here in Arizona, though, that is within Donald Trump's reach. It's trending blue, but that 4% margin improvement is definitely going to hand Donald Trump the win. Joe Biden is leading here, just by 2 points or so, something like that. Just by 2 points or so. And that 4% margin improvement is going to give Donald Trump the win here in Arizona. As well as these 2 other states that are trending blue here in the South, Texas and Georgia, where Donald Trump just reclaimed the lead narrowly from Joe Biden. Joe Biden had about a 2-point lead here in Georgia, according to 538 averages. He had a razor-thin lead here in Texas of like 0.3 or something like that. Really, really razor-thin. Donald Trump just reclaimed the lead here in Texas and recently in Georgia as well. So yeah, that 4% margin improvement is actually just going to, really flip these into, a comfortable margin for Donald Trump, and he is going to pull off victories in these 2 states. As well as 2 2016 Trump states, Iowa and Ohio. We see Donald Trump with a really pretty narrow lead here in Iowa, considering he won it by 9 points in 2016. It's like a 2-point lead for Donald Trump here in Iowa, but that 4-point margin improvement, that's going to be a 6-point margin. So yeah, Donald Trump will pull off a victory in Iowa, not by too much less of a percentage than he did in 2016. Ohio, that's going to go to Donald Trump, much narrower than the 8 or 9 points he won it in 2016. But yeah, that 4-point margin improvement will flip the state of Ohio from a Joe Biden lead of about 2 points, according to 538 averages. Slightly different on RCP, but same ballpark, same general numbers. That's going to become a Trump state in 2020. Now, before we move on, I do want to fill in this second congressional district. It would actually go to Joe Biden. We have really minimal polling data here, but Joe Biden actually had a 7 point lead in the latest poll. Really, the only recent poll that was done here in the Nebraska second congressional district. So technically, I'm not saying this is realistic for Joe Biden to win here. I honestly don't think Joe Biden will win here. But going by the statistics, that 4% margin of improvement, and then looking at the polling data that we have from Nebraska, that's going to fall into the Joe Biden column. But yeah, interesting thing to point out here in the second congressional district. Yeah, and then another thing I really want to quickly fill in is Virginia, which is getting more and more out of reach for the Republicans. They're really slipping here in Virginia. It's trending more and more to the left, and it's been competitive for a while. It's long been considered a battleground state, but now it's more and more just becoming a Democratic state. Joe Biden has an 11 point lead here. That 4% margin improvement, that's still going to be a 7 point margin in Joe Biden's favor. So yeah, Virginia just too out of reach for Donald Trump, even in this comeback scenario. And then in the entire Rust Belt, that's all gonna go to Joe Biden. We see him with substantial leads in all these states. I know 9 points or so here in Wisconsin and also Michigan, something like, 9 points or so. And then in Minnesota, where we don't really have polling averages yet due to the lack of polling, we saw a decently rated poll, B plus, or I think, according to how 538 grades the polls. When we're talking about how the polls are rated, I look at 538. B plus rated poll, as I recall, that showed Joe Biden ahead by 5 points, and then there was a lower rated poll that showed him up by 16 points. So you going with the lower rated poll, we see him with a huge lead. Going with the decently rated poll, we see him with a mere 5 point lead. But I actually think Clinton won it by less than 2% in 2016. Trump won Wisconsin and Michigan. I think it's sort of following suit with these other two Rust Belt states. Maybe a 9 point lead or so for Joe Biden here in Minnesota. So that's not going to go to Donald Trump. Even if you want to go with that one poll that showed things as narrow as 5%, that's still not close enough for Donald Trump to win here in Minnesota with this comeback scenario. So the entire Rust Belt going to Joe Biden. And then Pennsylvania, Joe Biden's state of birth right here in Pennsylvania. Another one of these states, just the polling margin's too out of reach for Donald Trump in this comeback scenario. Joe Biden has a 7 point lead or so here in Pennsylvania, and that's really quite substantial. And even in this, this is almost the most realistic comeback scenario for Donald Trump, I think, the 4% margin improvement. If Donald Trump makes a comeback, Pennsylvania too far out of reach if we're going with this scenario. And yeah, so Joe Biden does really well with the blue collar voters in the Rust Belt in Pennsylvania. I don't know if the Pennsylvania being Joe Biden's state of birth is helping him out here, maybe a tiny bit. But yeah, these just too out of reach for Donald Trump. He would, though, win in North Carolina. Oh, by the way, we see, we'll get to this in a bit, but we do see Joe Biden just crossed the 270 mark on our map. So yeah, just be aware of that, and we'll get to that in a bit. After we fill in the rest of the states here. But yeah, Donald Trump would pull off a win in North Carolina. One of these other solid wins that Donald Trump would have. Victory in North Carolina, where we see things narrowing down. Yeah, and Donald Trump, with this 4 point margin improvement, would take the win in North Carolina. Yeah, and it'd be, a 2 point margin for Donald Trump or so here in North Carolina. So yeah, 15 electoral votes, no small prize. Yeah, so that's going to go into the Trump column in this scenario. Florida, that's just too out of reach. Once again, one of these states that Joe Biden almost has a lock on. If Joe Biden's campaign doesn't put up any sort of defense in these states, Donald Trump could make serious inroads and flip these. But these are battleground states. You can't just assume that Joe Biden campaign is not gonna try to retain these states and put up a fight, a defense, some sort of defense in these states, even though he has just because he has substantial leads, right? They're gonna be defending these states. Trump campaign, I'm sure, is gonna try to make inroads. Joe Biden's gonna be on the defense here in these states. These substantial leads, Joe Biden almost has kind of a lock on these states. I really don't see Trump surmounting these types of leads. We're seeing 6 point lead in Florida, 7 point lead in Pennsylvania, and then we're seeing like 8 or 9 point leads in Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota. So yeah, Joe Biden really kind of has a lock on these states, and they're just not going to be, in my opinion, surmountable for Donald Trump. And then even in this comeback scenario where he improves the margins by 4 points, just statistically doing the math, these would not flip to Donald Trump. And then filling these last two states here, New Hampshire quite close in 2016. We're seeing like an 8 point lead for Joe Biden. Not going to flip. Maine statewide not going to flip. 11 point lead for Joe Biden compared to the 3 point margins in 2016. But that second congressional district would stay with Trump from 2016. He won it by over 10 points. And if you do the math, looking at the polls, and then applying this comeback scenario, that would stay in the Trump column. That's the congressional district here in Maine. So yeah, this is the final electoral vote tally. If Donald Trump makes, a realistic sized comeback, this type of comeback is not out of reach for Donald Trump. So yeah, this is a comeback scenario for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump makes a comeback, we see 308 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 230 electoral votes for Donald Trump. That's actually a bigger margin than Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. It was, before the Electoral College with those few faithless electors that we see occasionally. It was 232 for Clinton and then 306 for Trump. So really what that comes down to is Joe Biden's lock on the Rust Belt, his lock on Pennsylvania, and honestly his lock on Florida. And then the Democrats, their safe states, let's talk about that for a bit. They have these safe states that have tons of electoral votes. 55 in California, Illinois with 20 electoral votes, safe Democratic state. New York, safe Democratic state with 29 electoral votes. The average Democratic state has more electoral votes than the average Republican state. Let's look at the biggest safe state, really safe Republican state in terms of how many electoral votes it has. I've done this before, and it's actually Tennessee with 11 electoral votes. So California here with 55, the largest safe Democratic state in terms of electoral votes, and then Tennessee, the largest safe Republican state in terms of electoral votes, just 11. So Republicans, a big part of that is Republicans do well in the more rural areas, these sparser states. We see a lot of these, the Dakotas with 3 electoral votes, and then here in the South, the Republicans do well, 9 electoral votes, and then the largest one, Tennessee, with 11 electoral votes. So we see really an urban/rural divide in the country right now. The country's also getting more and more polarized in terms of its electoral map. But yeah, so combined with these safe Democratic states tending to have more electoral votes than the safe Republican states, and then Joe Biden having a lock pretty much on the Rust Belt in Pennsylvania and Florida, even in a comeback scenario for Donald Trump, right now, unless we see some big changes, I'm not ruling out that big changes can happen. That's part of what happens in campaigns. Big, unpredictable events happen. So, I'm not, if you're a Trump supporter, I'm not saying Trump won't win, possibly. Things happen. Big stuff happens. Big changes happen in the campaign. But really, when we're looking at the data right now, if Donald Trump makes a comeback, this is what the electoral map would look like. It would be a bigger margin for Joe Biden, a bigger Biden win than the Donald Trump win was in 2016. And, that's not any sort of bias. This is literally just taking a look at the data and then applying a realistic comeback scenario. So yeah, if Donald Trump wants to win this election, we're going to have to see some big changes. He has some solid wins here: North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, solid wins, but it's just not enough for Donald Trump. So we're going to have to see some big changes if Donald Trump wants to win this election. But anyway, guys, I hope you thought this video was interesting, taking a look at what the electoral map would look like in this type of realistic Trump comeback scenario. So yeah, hope you guys thought this video was interesting. If you enjoy this type of content that I make, electoral maps, polls, data analysis, and all things elections, all things election related, you should definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel, There's more of this type of stuff to come, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy the other videos on my channel too. So yeah, hope you guys subscribe to my YouTube channel. And yeah, say it once again. Hope you guys thought this video was interesting. Hope you enjoyed the video. And I will see you in the next Election Center video. Bye.